from our fighter group. And what happened after I left, he was crew chief on an airplane, and the invasion, of course, moved on up into France, and one of our airplanes went down, landed with some kind of difficulty. So one of our pilots took the T-6 in Mel, and they flew over and repaired the airplane, and then the guy could bring it back. Well, they got stuck over there. The weather was bad, and then apparently made a decision after a couple of days to make a try at it, you know, scud run. And they run into the cliffs of Dover, and both of them were killed. But back to the crew chief story. By the way, Heino was 95. I went to his birthday. He rented a whole restaurant, invited his patrons and me. And he said, "You're all invited to my 100th birthday. I think I'm going to make it." 2 months later, he passed away suddenly like that. So he's not with us anymore. But anyway, back to the story about how dedicated and how hard these guys work. It was on my second tour. I had the D model. It was painted all green, dark green, and this one over here. And we weren't paying too much attention to the paint schemes anymore. We had silver ones, we had half painted ones, we left a lot of them were just camouflage. And it was the first snow had hit Germany over there, first snow in November. I was looking down on the snow, and there was a flight of 4. 2 of them were camouflage, and 2 of them were silver. And they were flying across the snow. Well, which one stood out? You know, the dark one, of course. And I thought about that a little bit, and I said I knew I was going to finish during the winter, and I thought, you know, I'd like to have that airplane silver for the rest of my tour. And actually, I thought it was a cooler paint scheme. I thought it looked a little better. But when I landed, they're all waiting for me. My crew chief in his armor, Leon Zimmerman, and Otto were there. And I told him about this, and I put it to him. I said, "Please de-paint the airplane and put it in the silver paint scheme for me the next time it's laid up for heavy maintenance." Now, I thought that would take a couple of days, and went in, decided to fly the next day. Came out in the morning, and there was an operation shack, and I had to go over to my revetment, and climbed up over my revetment, and I was standing up at the top, looking down, and here's that Mustang sitting there, looking just like that, gleaming aluminum. And these 3 guys were kind of standing there at attention, and I felt like a jerk. I said, "God, did these guys think I gave a direct order to do that?" Then I thought about it a little bit, you know. I looked at their hands, and their hands were raw. They've been using 145 grade fuel to, you know, scrape and clean and get it ready. You know, I thought about it a little bit and said, no, you know, they wanted to do that. That was their part, you know, that's it. You got a kill, and you painted that kill on that, their kill too. That's the story about the crew chiefs of the world. I take my hat off to them. I can't say enough about them. Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, Jack forgot something. Can you believe that? Jack Roush forgot something? Yeah, he wants to talk a little bit, Jack.
Yeah. We gonna let him?
Yeah, let him talk. Do you have another story?
Sure.
I
got hundreds of them. No, come on.
Are you sure? The one thing that I wanted to point out, you know, and there's a question, you know, in America, we're losing our greatness, we're losing our manufacturing base. I certainly hope that's not true. It's certainly not going to happen under my watch or on Jim's watch or Mark's watch. You know, those of us that can make a decision on what our industry does and what we're involved in, we're going to make those good decisions going forward. But during the war, you know, there was, I've made a point of saying that the English could not build their stuff fast enough to support what they needed. We also, if you looked and said what made the American wilderness, as you might look, we were relatively underpopulated for the size of our country. What made us be able to do what we did to make the tanks and the planes and the jeeps and all the equipment that was necessary to win the war was the mobilization of the American automobile industry and all the manufacturing things that went with it, not to mention the coal and the oil and the other things that came behind it. But in 1940, I had my note, and I glanced over it here, I passed over it, I didn't mean to. 1940, Henry Ford was one of the isolationists. He did not think that we needed to embroil ourselves and send our young people off to protect the French and protect the English again. He thought, let them settle that, and let the Chinese take care of their problem, and he wanted to stay out of it. So Packard Motor Car Company got the same contact from the British Purchasing Commission that North American did. Edsel Ford, his only son, had made the agreement with Rolls-Royce the license to build the Packard engine, this 1650 cubic inch engine, 1400 horsepower engine. And Henry reversed it. He says, no, I'm still, like Jim is, he said, I'm still headed, and like I am in my world, I'm still head of this company. We are not going to engage at this time. We don't want to do that. So the Purchasing Commission went off to Packard, and they converted the Packard Motor Car Company to build the Rolls-Royce engine. That was the biggest thing they did. From 1939 to 1956, there were 170,000 so-called Rolls-Royce Merlin 1650 cubic inch, a 60-degree V12 engines built. 1943 to 1945, right when Bud was doing his business, Packard Motor Car Company built 85,000 engines. And those engines were the best engines in the world. They were in the ships that were going over the submarines, the German submarines were chasing. They were in Spitfires, they were in Lancasters, they were in Mosquitoes. All those English airplanes, most of them had engines, Packard-built engines made in it. They could have been Fords. It could have been a Ford, which I'd have been happier with, given what happened to Packard later. But anyway, that's the story of how the Rolls-Royce licensed engine got to be Packard rather than Ford. And of course, when Henry after Pearl Harbor occurred, and he says, okay, we are in, we're committed. He signed up to do what he could, and of course they built the Ypsilanti Airport near Detroit, near Dearborn there, where I keep two of these airplanes most of the time, three of them part of the time. And so they built that to build the B-24s, and of course he made his contribution there. But it was curious, as I think about all the things that I should respect and appreciate and understand and be thankful for, I'm thankful for the fact that we had the manufacturing capacity and they had the wherewithal and the will and the American people to come back and say, not on my watch, we're not going to let this happen either.
Yeah. No, I tell you what, we're about out of time. I got a couple of questions though. How many of you are members of the EAA Warbirds of America? Okay. The rest of you, shame on you. You need to join. It's worth the magazine. It really is. Wonderful stories like Bud's stories in there every month about aircraft restorations, and it's really cheap. It's not a cheap magazine, but it's a cheap price for a wonderful magazine. Bud's going to be over in the merchandise building over there in just a minute, signing autographs for you. I want to thank my guests today, Colonel Bud Anderson, Mr. Jack Rouse, and Mr. Jim Hagedorn. I got one more question. How many veterans in the audience? Stand up, please. Stand up and be recognized. Veterans. Now, all you people that are sitting down, I want you to turn around and thank that veteran for your freedom. Thank you for watching War.